All right, and now I'm going to go ahead and bring up our speaker, David Stokes. He is the Director of Municipal Policy at the Show Me Institute, Missouri's only think tank dedicated to promoting free markets and individual liberty. David left the Show Me Institute briefly to serve as the Executive Director of Great Rivers Habitat Alliance, where he led efforts to oppose harmful floodplain developments done with abusive tax subsidies, which obviously hot button item here tonight too. He returned to the Show Me Institute in 2021, taking on his current role as the Director of Municipal Policy. So, featured speaker David Stokes, please give him a round of applause. Welcome him.
Thank you. I'm going to take this out to move around a little bit. Unless that's going to happen, in which case I probably shouldn't. Right back in there. Not going to have it making that noise to all of you. I was blessed with a pretty loud voice. Chris Howard in the back can verify that. So if I move around, you should be able to hear me in back. I'll make. If not, though, I'll be sure to use the mic. So thank you for having me here today. It's great to see so many people here. This is the largest crowd I've spoken to in a while. It's great to see so many elected officials here, and I assume you all get along. Maybe not. If you had this in St. Louis County, there'd be a food fight guaranteed, and that's at a bare minimum. Chris is waving his head in agreement back there. All right, so I grab the mic usually. Can you hear me in back? All right. So the Pope lands in New York City. He's given a speech at the United Nations. His plane is late. He's in a foul mood. Plane lands. He runs out of the airport. He grabs his bag, runs out of LaGuardia to his waiting limo. He grabs it. He says, "Limo driver, I'm late to my speech at the UN. You got to drive really fast." And the limo driver looks at the Pope. He says, "I'm sorry, Your Excellency. I've gotten a few speeding tickets. If I get another, I'll lose my license to drive this limo. I won't be able to feed my family." The Pope thinks for a second. He says, "All right, well, getting back in this limo. I'm driving. We got to get there." The limo driver's, "All right, you're the Pope." So he hops in back the limo. Pope jumps in front. And he takes off. He's making good time through New York, through Queens. He's driving over the bridge into Manhattan, down the Roosevelt Highway. Anyway, finally gets pulled over, though. And an officer comes up and sees who it is. He's like, "Oh, my goodness, Your Excellency. Let me call back to the station, see if I can smooth this over." So the policeman goes back to his car, he calls the station, goes, "Sergeant, I just pulled over somebody really important." And the sergeant's like, "What, did you just pull over the mayor?" And the policeman's, "No, more important than the mayor." The sergeant's like, "Did you just pull over the governor?" The policeman's like, "No, more important than the governor." And the sergeant can't believe it. He's like, "Officer, did you just pull over the president?" And the policeman's, "No, more important than the president." And the sergeant's like, Who did you just pull over?" And the policeman's like, "I don't even know, but his driver's the Pope." Right. So that's the first time I speak to any group. That's the automatic joke. So there's probably a few Jefferson County Packeter members here who've heard me say that joke to your group before. So thank you for letting me speak here today. I tend to give rather long speeches, but funny, I like to say. So I'll really tighten it up a little bit. I know we had an interesting talk to start, and I don't want to take this too long, and I want to leave plenty of time for questions here. I'm with the Show Me Institute. I would guess that some of you are familiar with the Show Me Institute, and I would guess that some of you have never heard of us before. We are a public policy organization founded in 2005. I went to work at the Show Me Institute in early 2007, and we are a free market economic think tank focused on state and local policy here in Missouri. I'm the Director of Municipal Policy, which means I cover cities, counties, special taxing districts, and local taxes, sales taxes, and especially property taxes. And I am going to just touch on this very briefly because it's a very interesting issue you all are going to be voting on here in a couple of weeks. But one of the things we do talk a lot about is this popping? Is this clear to everybody? All right, I don't want to get too close to it and pop too many peas.
You don't need to be too close.
Right. So we do cover a lot about education policy. That's not my area. I'm not going to get into the details of that. We have two policy people on our team who write extensively about education policy. And we have a website called mostschoolrankings.org. Some of you have probably been to it. But I do think you would enjoy going to it between now and the election. Because what it is Susan Pendergast, no relation to Tom Pendergast of Kansas City, it's spelled slightly differently. She's our education policy expert, and she basically took a lot of DESE data. DESE has voluminous data on test scores and taxes and many, many other things. And they're about as easy for the average person to find online and interpret as hieroglyphics at the bottom of the Dead Sea. So what Susan did was she took all of this data and created a website that's really easy to understand. It takes all this, there's no opinion on it. It's just DESE data, tax data and the like, put together in a format for anybody to check out. So if you want to check about how your school districts are doing in educating kids, how your taxes and spending rank compared to other school districts, it's all at mostschoolrankings.org, and I think you would all enjoy it. It was released about a year ago. It's been updated, and I hope you all check it out because there's a lot of good information there. We at Show Me Institute, we are very strong supporters of school choice, things such as education scholarship opportunities, open enrollment for public school districts. That was not passed in the last legislative session. Again, if you have questions about it, I'm mostly just going to refer you to their work. I'm not an education policy expert. I care deeply about high school sports. That's what I care a lot about myself. But Susan and James Shaw's, our other education expert, have a lot of good information there. So we have, as I said, we were formed, Show Me Institute, in 2005, started publishing 2005, 2006. We've released about 40 policy studies overall on taxes, economic growth, public policy. Everything we do comes from a free market economic perspective. Our current chief economist is Professor Aaron Hilmer, who was at the University of Missouri for a long time. He's at Purdue now. He served in the Trump White House as one of his economic advisors. He's a terrific economist, and he joined us about 2 years ago after his term, obviously, in the Trump White House came to an end. And he does a great job for us. And he just recently completed sort of a speaking tour down in Joplin and Springfield. Hopefully we'll get him to give a talk in Jefferson County at some point soon. But so we have our board consists of people such as Rex Singfield, Joe Forshaw, Jim Forsyth, Beavis Schock, Crosby Kemper out of Kansas City was one of our primary board members. And then when President Trump appointed him to a position in D.C., a nonpartisan position, he had to resign from our board. So that's all online. And we really work hard to bring the limited government, free market policy solutions to Missouri. And to that end, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't point out that we are a charity, we are a nonprofit, and we exist with the support of our donors. So if you like what you hear tonight, if you go to our website at showmeinstitute.org or mostschoolrankings.org and like what you see, please consider making a tax-deductible donation. I'll leave information up here. I also have up here a number of our newsletters. We just came out with our most recent newsletter. We've got a bunch of them up front. Feel free to take one of those and go on when you leave. And I'll stay after to answer questions as well. So I'm here to talk about several things. One of the things I write a lot about is tax policy. I started at St. Louis County in 2001. I've spent 6 years as an aide at the St. Louis County Council to the Republicans on the county council at the time. And just as I started, this is why, who remembers the 2001 drive-by assessment scandal in St. Louis County? Remember that? That's probably not the only place drive-by assessments have occurred, but that was the one where, honestly, hundreds of thousands of homes were just driven past rapidly over the course of a few weeks when the assessor, at some point in spring, realized that he had probably not hundreds of thousands, many tens of thousands of homes that had gone up more than 15%, and they hadn't physically inspected any of them as required by law. So they came up with a plan over about a month where they just had deputy assessors driving St. Louis County and driving past all these homes and calling that a physical inspection of the house. Well, I started at St. Louis County just as this scandal broke. And is that mine? All right. So I remember, and if you were there, I realize now this is 22 years ago, which is, I guess I'm dating myself for how long I've been in government and public policy. I mean, the assessor lost his job over it. The Department of Revenue director lost their job over it. It was quite the scandal at the time, and it led to eventually some good public policy changes. In particular, in 2007, they passed legislation called Senate Bill 711. It's obviously, I wouldn't usually be able to remember a legislative bill number so easily, but when it's 711, it's like, it's hard to forget. So I'll always remember that. So what that was that it simply changed the rules so that local governments could no longer, now they had to roll their tax rates back as assessments went up. It used to be that if you were beneath your cap, as you know, there's a legal cap to where your taxes can be. If you were far enough below that, you just didn't have to roll back further as assessments went up. And they changed that so that now it doesn't matter where you are with your cap. As assessments go up, you have to roll your rates back. But this is where this year comes into play. This is the first time we've had a general reassessment in a period of high inflation. The current system was installed in 1985. We haven't experienced high inflation since it was installed. So as the prior speaker sort of mentioned, and as I'm sure many of you know, this is going to be the first general reassessment. I know the assessor is here, right? What did Jefferson County go up? 20% on average, 25% on average? I think that's generally for the region. But because inflation has been so high, the rate rollbacks are going to be lower than they might otherwise have been. So that's where your other shoe is going to drop here. And that many of you have, obviously within the last month or so, got your assessment notices. I assume they're fairly high. The changes from 7 to 11, about 13, 14 years ago, would have at least addressed that in part by requiring rollbacks. Those rollbacks are still required, but with this high inflation, when they figure out this equation, they're really not going to be that large of a rollback. What does this mean? It means I think you're going to get very substantial tax increases at the end of this year. I'm not trying to frighten anybody. It could be worse. You could be in Kansas City, where the school district there is exempt from all property tax rollbacks. They're the only governing body in the state that's exempt from them. And when assessments go up there like they did in 2019, 20%, the school district just said, we're going to keep our rate as it is and get a 20% property tax revenue increase because they're exempt from that. I absolutely think that needs to be changed, but that's, of course, Kansas City School District, not Jefferson County. So this is, I feel for anybody trying to sell a 92-cent tax increase in the current environment. I think it's going to be quite the proposal for people to vote on just 2 months after getting reassessment notices and knowing, because it's been in the press a lot, just how high these assessment increases are. That said, we've been getting a little bit of attention at the Show Me Institute. I'm sure you've probably discussed it here. I do think something that needs to be done about assessments in Missouri. I don't think the fact that we need to do something means we should do the wrong thing. And I'm probably going to get some disagreement here in this room, but I do not think that doing what they're proposing to do in St. Louis County, which is state law just changed to allow this, but not require it. I don't think that freezing the property taxes for seniors is the right way to go about this. Again, trust me, I've gotten some hate email over this in the past couple of weeks, so feel free to disagree. I don't think cutting your tax base by freezing the taxes for one group of people is the right way to go about this. I know California went much further than this with much more dramatic changes, but it doesn't. Assessments should be accurate and the base wide so that the rate can be as low as possible for everybody. And I would warn against, as politically difficult as it may be, I would warn against efforts to freeze it for a portion of the population, because I think in the long run, and probably sooner rather than later, that's just going to take the people who don't have that treatment and make it worse for them. So that's my policy opinion that's going to make me, it's already made me unpopular among some St. Louis County Republicans. It's probably going to make me unpopular statewide. And no, I don't dislike seniors. My parents are still alive. These are all emails I've gotten accused of saying horrible things about me. My parents are still alive and paying taxes, as are we. So the like. I wanted to talk just about a few specific Jefferson County issues that we're following at the Show Me Institute, and then we can get into questions about development or whomever, which I was asked to address. One of the things really expanding dramatically in our state is special taxing districts, primarily transportation development districts and community improvement districts. These things, I mean, there are several hundred of these things, probably getting close to 600-700 total around the state, especially if you put in neighborhood improvement districts and the like. And they're just growing. These are just a quick and easy way for taxes to be increased, often without really the knowledge of the average voter. And I definitely commend this Jefferson County Council for rejecting the recent SID proposal here in Jefferson County. I hope that is expanded statewide as more counties and city officials really start to push back on these. McBride Homes, and I'm not picking on McBride Homes, but they're sort of making this a new standard in a lot of their developments in the region. Franklin County, St. Charles County, Jefferson County. And it's just, as they say, I've got a news story right here. It's just a way to help them keep prices low because they're going to take some of the expenses for their development and push them off to the future. And I agree with the council member, I think he's here, who said, why don't you just put those prices into the value of the home and sell it a home without creating a brand new special taxing district as part of it? Well, I completely agree on that. And I'm not saying every SID and every TDD in the state is bad. There's actually two in the Lake of the Ozarks I really like. The toll bridge in the Lake of the Ozarks is a TDD. I think it's a good one. They built it's a causeway, sort of like a bridge, a little different, to the only island in the lake. They did that with a community improvement district. Good examples of them. But far too often, these special taxing districts, as they grow around the state, they're just really just another vehicle of corporate welfare. And I don't like special deals. It's for the same reason about the senior property tax increase. We do way too many of these economic development incentives around the state of Missouri. And I commend Jefferson County for the tremendous judicious use of tax increment financing over the past few decades. As I believe you know, it's one of only now 5 counties in the state with a county TIF commission. And that's really valuable. You have a county commission to decide on tax increment financing here, not a city one. And it was one of the first 3 counties to have it. It's worked great in St. Charles County and Jefferson County, really limiting the use of TIF here in both of those 2 counties. It's been good in St. Louis County. It's not been as good as it could have been. We're still passing too many TIFs there, but it has limited it somewhat. In particular, they rejected an enormous floodplain development TIF about 4 years ago in Maryland Heights, and I thought that was an excellent decision by the county commission and county executive Page because they were his appointees. They've also then passed a few that I disagree with, but that's neither here nor there. So Jefferson County really stands out on that TIF commission. I'd love to see far more counties adopt countywide TIF commissions. Why does that matter? Well, if you only have a city deciding on your TIF, and let's leave aside the fact that when in the city TIF commission format, I'm getting ahead of myself. Does everybody here understand how tax increment financing works? I would imagine most of you do. You have a set amount. If your property is generating $1,000 in property taxes and $1,000 in sales taxes before the tax increment financing, and then after the development it generates $2,000 in property taxes and $2,000 in sales taxes, the developer gets to keep that $1,000 property tax increment and half of the $1,000 sales tax increment and put it towards allowable costs of the development. You can't just put it towards anything, but there are allowable costs that you can put it towards. And when cities only make this decision, well, cities depend a lot on sales taxes and very little, sometimes none at all, on property taxes. So they're making a choice based on, if a new Walmart comes into a green space, that increase in sales taxes can be enormous. Even if the city only keeps half of it, it can be a tremendous amount of money. Where the school district and the library district and the fire district and the ambulance, I'm in Jefferson County, so I should say the ambulance district, they depend entirely on property taxes. So the city makes a decision that benefits the city in the short run at least and sticks it to everybody else. So county officials at least are responsible to all the voters throughout that county and think a little more regionally. And that's why we've seen this work in Jefferson County and St. Charles County, and I'd like to see it expand far, far more. But also, I'd love to see the county council continue with this opposition to the abuse of SIDS and the abuse of TDDs in the state. And we need that to be far more judicious around the entire state as well. We do have a study on this at showmeinstitute.org about the growth in TDDs and SIDS around the state. And I think it's vital because how are you going to cut property taxes or limit the growth of property taxes when your sales taxes are also up sales taxes are now in shopping districts around the state are 10%, 12% if you go into St. Louis or Kansas City. But it's like they're both getting incredibly high, and I think it's very harmful. And this doesn't even get into the points that were raised by speakers with the SID proposal in Jefferson County, the excellent audits of state auditors of both parties over the past 20 years that document total lack of transparency, total lack of following the rules by many TDDs and many SIDs, and many of the management failures of them. I like to say, and it sometimes surprises people, I'm not actually such a fan of small government. I'm a fan more than ever of limited government. I love limited government, but I think Missouri is a place where we see many of the harms of small government because so much of the government, whether it's a municipality in St. Louis County with 300 people or a SID with the developer puts 5 people that work for the company on the board, that they're so small nobody pays any attention to them because it's almost impossible to pay any attention to governments that are that small. And so you see a lot of bad government at that level. And so I hope that Jefferson County continues to be disciplined in its use of SIDs and TDDs and TIFs, as they certainly have been for TIFs and appear to be now for SIDs and TDDs. I'm probably getting there. I could go on and on and on and on. So one other thing I want to 2 more minutes? 2 minutes. Thank you.
Wait, yeah.
And then we'll go to Q&A. But I will try to do this in 1 minute. Another thing we're really interested in at Show Me Institute is the ongoing issue with the Crystal City and Festus sewer system and the deal they've made with the Jefferson County Public Sewer District to transfer ownership and management of the sewer systems there. I wrote a letter to the leader about it. It didn't get published. Hopefully it will this week. I testified before the city councils about it. There's nothing. I think it's wonderful that they're looking for those cities to move out of the business and to transfer the ownership and management of that system to a larger scale entity. And the Jefferson County Public Sewer District may well be the best operator for that. But I do find it troubling that they didn't take bids from any other entities, at least as far as I know. They certainly didn't say they took bids from any other entities. We saw other private utilities go to those city council meetings and ask for the ability to make a bid towards it, but that was rejected. At least it was rejected in the short term. It may be allowed in the long run. I recognize they're just in a negotiating period with the Jefferson County Public Sewer District right now, and no final deals have been signed at all. But I do think that the people of Crystal City and Festus, what's the harm of getting as many bids as you possibly can? Why would you not have private utilities go in and bid on that? We know we're here in Arnold, where the sewer system was sold for millions and millions of dollars several years ago, where Eureka has a portion of the town in Jefferson County, and I'm aware that what Eureka privatized last year is entirely in St. Louis County, so that's not the Jefferson County part of it. But there's a lot to be said for getting a better valuation of it by getting as many bids as you possibly can. There's nothing wrong with privatizing it to a private company or outsourcing it to a private company, all those rate increases in the future, they'd be regulated by the State Public Service Commission, and it's a good system. All that said, the Jefferson County Public Sewer District bid may well be the best bid, and I certainly do commend the cities for phasing out of the utility business, because I think as utilities generally get more complicated and larger, the regulations at the federal level and state level get more strict. It becomes harder for them to meet up to that, and it's good to see them getting out of it. I just wish they'd be taking more bids. And with that, I could speak for hours, but I think I'm getting the old 70s game show hook to pull me aside.